Hello, and welcome to the Armchair Conservative. Hello, and welcome to the Armchair Conservative. I'm your host, Steve Cohen, and this is my first program. Now, yesterday was Inauguration Day, and there's so much to talk about as far as the election and Joe Biden and Donald Trump and all this business. However, if you'll just kindly bear with me, I'd like this first program to be sort of an introductory program. I can tell you a little bit about myself, what do I expect to accomplish from doing this show, and we can also discuss why I feel the country is so divided, because I think we need to start there. Now, I started in radio back when I was 19 years old. I'm a Generation Xer, and so I won't tell you what year that was, but by the time I was 21, I had my own radio show, and I loved it. And I left radio in the early 90s, and I really miss it. So that was one of the reasons that prompted me to do this program, but also because we are so divided in this country. You know, I feel like we're not acting like the United States of America right now. We're acting like the antithesis of the United States of America. We're not acting united. We're very divided. And I'm going to go into why I feel that is the case. But that really prompted me to do this program also, particularly due to the events that have transpired in the past several months. Now, why do I feel we're so divided? There's probably 100 different reasons, but I think there are mainly three. So let me go over these with you. I think number one, one of the reasons we are so divided is because the left has been getting its way for over 60 years. They've been getting their own way in this country for over 60 years. And you're going to hear me refer to that often, that I feel that way. Because, you know, the Democrats are very funny people. They're very persistent. And when they want something, it may take them the first try, the fifth, or the 10th. It may take them a year. It may take them decades. But they don't give up. And they get their own way eventually. And it's usually not in the best interest of this country. It's usually in their best interest. It doesn't benefit you and I. Believe me. And I think what happens there is it also causes Republicans to be sort of squeamish, they're intimidated by this. And they don't act like Republicans. So they get their way. And I think the average citizen started to take notice of this and started to realize, hey, I don't like this. And it started to divide us as a people, especially when you see one side is getting what it wants more often than not. And then, like I said, eventually they get it anyway. So I think that's first thing. Second thing is Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. We really need to take a look at that. Very divisive guy. I think probably the most divisive president in modern times. And it's so unnecessary. So unnecessary. Here was a guy that was voted as the first black president by a predominantly white electorate. And what does he do? He goes running around insinuating that a majority of the country is racist. His wife certainly does the same thing. They still do it now. Outrageous. Such a squandered opportunity. I think Barack Obama set race relations back in this country 50 years. And I'll tell you something else about Barack Obama. I think he's largely responsible for the anti-police sentiment we have in this country by some people. I think he is absolutely responsible for some of the violence, for this anti-police rhetoric, this defund the police, all this nonsense we are hearing. Because let's face it, the police are all that stands between us and complete anarchy. Make no mistake about that. Most of your police officers are good, hardworking people. Men and women that take their jobs absolutely seriously. I'm sure some of them wanted to be police officers since they were children, or maybe they come from families, multiple generations of police officers, but they take their job seriously. Now, certainly you're going to get bad apples. Of course that happens. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in my own town. But usually these police officers eventually get fired, and you're going to have that. That's just part of life. You're always going to have some bad apples. But I think the majority of police officers out there are good, honest, hardworking people. And the idea that they target black Americans, black men specifically, that's ridiculous. Furthermore, the police don't want to, the very last thing a police officer wants to do is take someone else's life. They don't even like to fire their weapons in the line of duty. And we have to understand that. And then I've heard people say, well, why don't they just shoot him in the leg? No. If anybody who says something like that has no understanding of what a police officer faces on a daily basis. But anyway, we can get into that more in depth. But that's Barack Obama. I think he's responsible very much for what's going on in the country right now. He poured gasoline on the fire. No question. Lastly, and here's the big one, folks, the media. They are absolutely to blame. They absolutely are. They divide us as a people every single day. It's disgusting. Their behavior is completely irresponsible. And it's so unnecessary. It is so unnecessary that they act this way. And it wasn't always like that. I grew up in a country where the media wasn't like this. Now, they always kind of leaned, they always sort of kind of leaned to the left a little bit in my lifetime. But they were pretty good at hiding it. But those of you that are under the age of 40, you wouldn't have any memory of that. The media really began to show their true colors in 1992 during the 92 presidential campaign, which was Bill Clinton against Bush 41, H. Walker Bush, and then also we had Ross Perot. That's when they really began to show their true colors. That's certainly when I noticed it. So if you're under the age of 40, you're really not going to have any memory of the media being anything other than they are right now. Let's remember something. The reason we have conservative talk radio, the reason we have Fox News, for now, and the reason we have these alternative sites like Epoch Times and Newsmax and Gateway Pundit and these Breitbart, places like that, the reason we have that is because the media no longer does its job. They no longer are unbiased and give a fair analysis of what's going on. They just simply don't. And that's why we have these alternative sites and we have these alternative news outlets and we have Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and people like that. We have to. But the media wasn't always like this. Now, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Back in 1979, now sounds like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. Back in 1979, President Jimmy Carter was not a popular guy, and there was talk that Teddy Kennedy would primary him for the 1980 nomination, Democratic National Committee convention. That there was talk that it was going to be Teddy Kennedy. Now, he was a senator from New York, had been senator at that point, I think 17 years, since 1962. But what's interesting is 10 years earlier, in 1969, Teddy Kennedy was involved in an incident referred to today as Chappaquiddick. Now, those of you that don't know about this, let me just give you just a quick refresher. What happened was, and there were lots of rumors as to what actually happened, but the story went out that Teddy Kennedy was at a party and he drove a great big Oldsmobile 88. Big 88, big rear-wheel drive car, a B-body. That's GM lingo for you. Was giving a woman a ride home late at night. It was around midnight. Made a wrong turn, drove down a dirt road, went off a pier, flipped the car over on its roof into a pond, shallow water. Was able to get himself out of the car, but his passenger, this woman named Joanne Kopechne, was trapped in the car. He never notified authorities, never went for help. He apparently got some attorney friends of his, and they encouraged him to get help, but he didn't. And he, I'm sure, was worried as how he was going to explain the fact that he was alone with this woman late at night. Here's a married man. What are you doing with this woman? And by the way, she had alcohol in her system. So, and he probably did as well, but we'll never know because he wasn't tested. Instead of getting help, he left the scene, and Mary Jo Kopechne, who apparently did not die from injury sustained in the accident, and she did not drown. Apparently, there's been pretty good information that has come out subsequently that she suffocated in the car. There was an air pocket in the Oldsmobile. And the car was not discovered till 8 o'clock the next morning by a fisherman and his son. And she was dead by then. She ran out of oxygen and she died. Now, the point of me telling you this whole story is he never served prison time, never resigned from his Senate seat. Amazing. Now, you have to understand also that there was some sympathy for him. He was kind of seen as, I think, as sort of a tragic figure. Don't forget his brother, President Kennedy, had been assassinated 6 years earlier. Bobby Kennedy had been shot. His other brother had been shot, assassinated just a year earlier. I think it was pretty much common knowledge that Teddy Kennedy had a drinking problem. So there was some sympathy there. But nevertheless, he let this woman die. Now here he was 10 years later, wants to be president. And what's interesting, the reason I'm telling you all of this is because Roger Mudd, I don't know if any of you remember him, but he was a great guy from CBS News. He used to fill in for Walter Cronkite occasionally, and he did the weekend CBS Evening News during that era. Roger Mudd, great guy. I think he actually ended up going over to NBC at some point. But anyway, Roger Mudd did a 1-hour show, primetime special. They preempted programming, and it was called Teddy. Now, you can look for it on YouTube. It's there. I encourage you to watch it because it's really an eye-opener. You would never see this today. Roger Mudd really did a fantastic expose on Teddy Kennedy. And two things came out of that. And I'm sure Roger Mudd didn't even realize this was going to happen. He asked Teddy Kennedy, why do you want to be president? Now, it seems like a question he would expect. He seemed completely unprepared for the question at all and hesitated and then gave sort of a rambling, half-assed answer. So that really raised people's eyebrows, and then he really hammered him on Chappaquiddick, and rightfully so. And pretty much said that the public didn't believe him and that he had lied. So after this aired, Teddy Kennedy's popularity really sunk in the polls. This is when we had real polls, by the way. And it was clear there was no way he was going to be the nominee at that point or ever. He was never going to be president because there were so many unanswered questions about Chappaquiddick. But the point of me telling you this entire story is the fact that this would never happen today. There is no way in hell a major news outlet like CBS News would come on the air and attack a Democrat, even though it was 100% warranted. That wouldn't happen today. There is no way they would attack one of their own like that. Just wouldn't happen. And I've got to admit, and we're gonna do probably several segments on news media bias. And I've got to admit, when I was going through some of these old clips and some of these old programs dating back from the early 80s and 60s and 70s, even I was kind of taken back as how far we have sunk, how far the media has descended into complete and utter left-wing bias. Even I was surprised by it. So those of you under the age of 40, I think you're going to be pretty shocked because you've never seen it. You've never seen them act properly. You've always seen, you're just used to it. So anyway, I'm a little long here, but that's what I would like to do. We'll do two programs next week, maybe 15, 20-minute segments, and we'll see how that goes. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoy this program. I think we're going to really have a lot of fun doing it. I've got some great clips. You're going to love it. Anyway, thanks again. See you next time on The Armchair Conservative.